First, the three things you need to know right now about the coronavirus. The U.S. death toll is now more than 12,000 in what officials are calling the deadliest week of the pandemic. New York suffering its worst 24 hours with more than 730 deaths. The death toll there now more than 5,000. President Trump blaming the World Health Organization for getting the coronavirus pandemic wrong. He's now threatening to withhold funding. And Wuhan, the epicenter of the pandemic, getting a fresh new start. Chinese officials lifting an 11-week lockdown, allowing roughly 65,000 people to leave the city. Now let's take a look at the coronavirus cases here in Georgia. There are more than 9,100 confirmed COVID-19 cases, 348 people who have died. The state health department reporting nearly 1,900 people had to go to the hospital. 10 seniors at the same nursing home have died after testing positive. Pruitt Health telling 11 Alive the patients at Grandview Nursing Home in Athens died within the last few weeks. The Georgia National Guard deploying more than 100 troops to nursing homes affected by COVID-19. We saw some of their actions last week. Those troops are helping to step up sanitation methods to prevent exposure to our most vulnerable seniors. Governor Brian Kemp is expected to hold a news conference later today. This is the first time the governor will be addressing the state after mandating a statewide shelter-in-place order last week. That order is expected to last through April 13th. His address is this afternoon at 4, and we will carry it live on air at 11alive.com. The coronavirus pandemic may be impacting African Americans at a higher rate. According to reports from various cities, including Chicago and Milwaukee, African American communities are dying at a faster rate from this virus. Nick Sturdivant live in Atlanta this morning. And Nick, there's now a push from the federal level to release more data.
Yeah, that's right, Sheba. Good morning. And during yesterday's White House briefings, Dr. Anthony Fauci and President Trump both expressed their concerns. As of yesterday in Georgia, the latest data from the Department of Health shows African Americans account for 34% of the deaths. 29% are white. The department lists the race as unknown for about 35% of the people who have died. Experts say African Americans have more underlying medical conditions and less access to medical care. And according to an NBC report, African Americans making low income are also more at risk because they are more likely to have jobs that can't be done remotely.
You know, the African American community, we have pre-existing conditions such as obesity, such as asthma, such as diabetes, hypertension. I mean, our communities are rampant with those things anyway. Now you compound it by this deadly disease. I mean, it's no surprise that we're going to get hit harder.
And to add context to all of this, census data shows Georgia's population is about 32% African American.
All right, Nick, thank you. And the U.S. seeing a big spike in COVID-19 deaths. Let's tell you about that number one more time. It has jumped to more than 12,000 with nearly 400,000 confirmed cases. And some heartbreaking numbers out of New York State. More than 730 deaths in just 24 hours. That's about one person every 2 minutes who has died. And global cases now exceeding 1.4 million. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., President Trump is on the defense about his response to the pandemic. Tracy Potts has the latest.
In a couple of days, the cases will be down to...
President Trump reacting to a New York Times report that he downplayed the coronavirus pandemic as a close advisor warned it could kill millions of Americans.
You have to understand, I'm a cheerleader for this country. I don't want to create havoc and shock and everything else. I'm not going to go out and start screaming, this could happen, this could happen.
The president blames the World Health Organization.
They called it wrong. They called it wrong. They missed the call. They could have called it months earlier. They would have known. And they should have known.
And he's defending small business loans that got off to a rocky start with $90 billion in requests stuck in red tape.
We need the PPP to enable us to resume operations, rehire our staffs, pay our bills. It's extremely urgent.
The Treasury Secretary,
the money, you'll get it the same day,
now says
we want to assure the workers that if you don't get the loan this week, there'll be plenty of money for you next week.
In New York City, 20% of the police force is out sick, even as New York State sees its deadliest day with one person dying every 2 minutes. The governor says there's hope.
3-day average is down, which is good news.
And a grim reality in Chicago and Louisiana.
Those numbers take your breath away.
A disproportionate 7 out of 10 coronavirus deaths are African American.
President Trump meets today with mental health professionals to talk about how to help Americans deal with the stress and anxiety and loss brought on by this virus. Tracy Potts, NBC News.
Everyone is hurting. Tracy, thank you. Turning to developments overseas right now, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson remains in intensive care due to complications from coronavirus. He has been in the hospital since Sunday, weeks after testing positive. He's said to be in stable condition and breathing without any assistance. UK leadership sending out an optimistic message to ease the minds of a worried nation as the country's foreign minister is stepping up to take over Johnson's duties. The UK has been in lockdown since March 23rd. Healthcare professionals and many other essential workers have been on the front lines of this pandemic, putting their lives on the line each and every day. And now there's a push to provide hazard pay to those workers as part of this next phase of the economic stimulus package. Liza Lucas joins me now from her home in Fulton County, social distancing. Liza, we're talking about up to $25,000 per person for the rest of the year?
That is right. Of course, we're still waiting to see how those numbers will play out, but just based on that number alone, that would be the equivalent of a $13 an hour pay raise. So Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, he is calling this a heroes fund, and he says that these essential workers have gotten a lot of praise and applause, but they also need pay. Now, a few more details. Schumer declaring the proposal will be, quote, the highest priority from Democrats as Congress negotiates the next phase of the coronavirus relief bill. The proposed benefits would provide up to $25,000 in hazard pay for frontline workers, capping the payout at $5,000 for those who already make $200,000 a year or more. Now, Schumer has been actively tweeting about this proposal, saying no proposal will be complete without addressing the needs of doctors, nurses, medical workers, truck drivers, grocers, transit workers, and more. We have been following the conversation since we shared this story on our page as well. Monica saying, finally, someone taking action instead of just thank yous. Barbara says this is the best idea that anyone has come up with. But Teresa kind of putting things on pause. She says, let's get through this virus, then celebrate. And others wondering about the numbers. Again, this is a proposal right now. We're expecting to have more details. We're going to keep you posted. I have tweeted a few more details from some of those senators that have been sharing this on their pages. So you can check out my Twitter feed for more information. But thumbs up, thumbs down. Let me know what you think. Use that hashtag MorningRushATL. Fran?
Liza, thank you. 6:08 is your time. In other news, we've been telling you about the growing unemployment numbers, but now it seems like we haven't even reached the peak. In fact, those numbers are increasing. They are getting worse. Now, according to the United Nations Labor Organization, they estimate that 195 million full-time jobs could be lost in the second quarter alone from the COVID-19 outbreak, with businesses and plants shuttered worldwide. The projection is based on an emerging impact on the virus, and it amounts to a big jump from its March 18th prediction for an extra 25 million jobs lost for all of 2020. And citing a frozen quarantine economy, a new survey shows nearly 1 in 4 Americans were unable to cover the full rent or mortgage payment for April. The news came after President Donald Trump vowed to suspend evictions and foreclosures for 60 days as part of a $2 trillion coronavirus relief package that he signed March 27th. And coming up at 6:45, our financial expert will join us live on the show and answer your money questions. You've been texting them on to the number on your screen. That number is 404-885-7600. And remember, text, do not call, and include your name. Also, the fallout from the coronavirus, of course, has changed the way we operate as a world, but could it change the way we use democracy? Well, a new study says that's the case. Citizenship oath ceremonies and in-person interviews have been canceled, meaning hundreds of thousands of people may not naturalize in time for November's elections. Now, according to Boundless Immigration, ceremonies and interviews remain shut down until October without any alternatives. About 441,000 people who have been citizens would be deprived of the chance to vote.
All right, take a look at the radar right now. It seems to be pretty calm.